Go ahead and let the virtual students get on and the attendance sheet here. All right. I will be back. Yeah, if anyone has questions, you can go. I'll be, like, that's my job. All right, folks, be back in a little bit. Nice. Happy Thursday, everybody. 2 days for spring break, right? Nice.
Oh, you're gonna be, you're gonna that. He said, whatever is on top of his mind. You can use it. It's IU. Or is it on Saturday after 3? Right. Good. Other someone with all-stars. Yeah, you want to hear. A little bit. We'll cover like 4. The last 2 rounds, I would have 4 like 4. The idea of possibly moving past politics for like 3 or 4 days. Like 2 to 7:30. Like my wife was like, oh, I have to wake up at 7:30. Just a year ago.
Great. All right, we're gonna get this popping. I just want to, I think I put it on the page, so let me let everybody in here. I don't know how long this is gonna last, to be honest, just because, I don't know. This is something, a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. I've always enjoyed teaching in the past, so I'm really happy to be back here, even despite the fact that I can barely see out of my left eye. It works. So, while these people on Zoom are getting in, people in school, I want to give a thumbs up, a this way or this way on the 2 days that you've been back. So go ahead, give it to me now. Let's see what our votes are. We got thumbs up. Chris, I can't see it. The camera's got to see it. Kamara. Okay, up. Oh, that's good. Middle of the road. Yeah, got it. Got it. Not bad. Not bad. Awesome. All right, Kanan. Are we here on the first 2 days with people in school? Good. It's good to hear. All right. Those of you on Zoom, if you want to put in the chat box to start off class today, we were just taking a poll of thumbs up, neutral, or thumbs down on the first 2 days back. I'm curious to get your input just because you're still wherever you are at home and we are in a classroom now for the first time in basically 12 months. All right, on that note, I'm also going to go ahead and take us to a Canvas page for today underneath the current modules. So you see what we got with Mr. Renshaw here. He has all of them open. That's nice. And so it is called 325 Crisis in the Congo. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. Got nobody in the chat box. That's okay. I'm going to pull that over first. There we go. All right. Thumbs up for the 2 days. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. All right. So we're starting off here today from the week number 12 module where it says 325 Crisis in the Congo. Kanan, do you think you could shut the door for me? Quickly, again, just wanted to say welcome to everybody who's genuinely in the room. And then secondly, just that Mr. Renshaw made a lot of growth throughout the semester. He was able to support a lot of you. And I was very grateful that he had that opportunity. Obviously, things will be a little bit different here, just different styles. And he had a little more time than I had just teaching 3 classes. And I'm really trying to focus on that. So if you're turning in late work, please just send to me as a Canvas message, all right? I don't have problems with that. If you missed the Nearpod, I'll have a student paste Nearpod on here shortly. I'll just upload it during the passing period. And then I would say last thing, just if you have questions or confused about anything, Canvas messages are good. Sometimes I'll get back to you at 9 at night, 10 at night, or 6 in the morning. It just depends on when I can get to a computer. All right. I am helping coach a little bit of girls tennis as well. Any type of office hours, if you need to Zoom or anything like that, you can either come down here, like talk to me, come down here on a study hall. We can still meet after school. I did that yesterday with somebody, or we can do it on Zoom if you're at home or you prefer to do that. Okay. Just need to put it in my schedule book and we'll go from there. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and I'll ask you guys, or ask everybody in the class to press on this link. And then what I'm going to do is launch it from my computer. And make sure that this is the correct one. So it should take you to here. I already got 19. That's awesome. Let me just make sure this is the right one. It is. All right, perfect. Like I said, today's pretty light. I know you did Nearpods 3 days in a row, so most of you are like, wow, I'm done with Nearpod. This might be a little bit different, like I said, different style. So I've got 23 people in here. I've got 5, 7, 9, 12, 15, 17, and 11 online. So I should have 28. So I'm going to be taking attendance off of this Nearpod. Just because that's the easiest way for me to take attendance. So if you're at home and you're on this Zoom, you need to make sure that you get on this Nearpod. The link is, I'll go ahead and post the link in the chat as well, in case anybody is confused. Get it in by 8 o'clock tonight. Okay, thank you. Just because I'm hoping to get to bed at a decent time. We'll see what happens. All right, those of you that are at home, there's the link. I would like to try to get started here. We got 25. Can I get a thumbs up from people in the room? Is everyone in? In. Timmy, I didn't see it. Tim, there's a camera. They got to see it. That's how I keep my job. See that black box right there? You know what I mean? No, it's not actually a camera. I'm just playing with you. All right. One other reminder as we get going here, put your cell phones and earbuds away. This will take about 25 minutes, and then you have some time on your own, all right? Maybe 30 minutes. All right. So moving forward here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called the crisis in the Congo. So based off of yesterday, what I watched you learn and what you've been learning, I wanted you to answer the question, what do you remember about King Leopold from yesterday? Or, oh, there it is. Or let me, how did the idea of the white man's burden affect the continent of Africa? So looking for you to put in one of those two, answer one of those two questions. All right. Either one that you feel most comfortable with. All right. We got an answer here that says he was the reason for the separation of Africa. I remember that King Leopold caused a lot of bad things to happen in Africa and the British, after the British conference, okay? Not bad. The white man's burden affected Africa because they had the idea that the Africans were just below them and they had to help and colonize them. That's a fantastic answer. It came to deforestation. That's true. Racist ideology that negatively affected Africa. Good. White man's burden. King Leopold was the king of Belgium who started African colonization, was brutal to the Africans. Awesome. All right, so 67%, 74%. Obviously, if you're at home, I got to share this screen and then you'll be able to see these. Sorry about that. Let's do a new share. Let's get that Nearpod in. All right, and then those of you that are here in class, you can see answers in case you don't know what's going on. I didn't put a timer on because I wanted to have a little bit of a talk about this. So, is the white man's burden a real thing? What do you think? Kanan, why not? I'm sorry about that. So on Zoom, we're having a little discussion if this is a real thing. Can you say it again? Yeah. Okay. Not responsible for a whole other continent. Anything else that would be to say that the white man's burden is not or is not a thing? Just curious. What do you think? Luke, can you say a little louder? Yeah. So Luke said, and Kanan said, I think was getting there, that this was a false notion. It was wrong, right? It was a mistake that was made in history, a bad, dumb mistake, okay? And it was using the theory of Charles Darwin. You guys have heard of him, right? Again, I can't say that enough because it caused a lot of problems that exist in the world to this day. For, I'd say, billions of people. It goes from Africa all the way through Asia, okay? Because of this ideology, all right? So I want you to think about that. And it wasn't just King Leopold's fault. He may have got the ball rolling, but once he got the ball rolling, it kept going. And it had already started in places like India, in Vietnam, or what it would be called, like Indochina. China got torn apart, which I don't know if you guys talked about with Mr. Renshaw, the greatest civilization in the history of the world, China, got torn up. All right, let's move on. So, Ian, stay with me until I'm done. All right, King Leopold of Belgium never once went to the Congo. Okay, this in my stomach in college. I took a course on, not a course on this. It was a survey course, but we got to read this book. It was history of the world from like 1450 to the present. And when we read this book called King Leopold's Ghost, obviously a ghost is something that continues on. This guy never once went to the Congo, but he made $1.1 billion off of it. Okay. I know $1.1 billion doesn't sound like that much money anymore because of people like Mark Cuban and LeBron James' empire and blah, blah, right? But $1.1 billion is a lot of money to never have stepped foot in an area that he claimed that is bigger than the entire Midwest itself. Okay, that's crazy. So he never got on a boat and actually went there. Then he started making up fake names. Okay, and these fake names are pseudonyms or are acronyms or things that sometimes we fall into as well. Okay, has anyone ever like seen a sign? Like sometimes I'm guilty. I'll see like the TIAFF and I'll get it in the mail and I'll be like, huh. And it'll be like something about like my life insurance policy or like some weird thing account that I have. And I'm like, oh, I wonder how much percent it went up or down. So I open it up and I'm like, that's stupid. It's selling me life insurance. I already have it. Like, that was a waste of paper, waste of time. You know, like acronyms, sometimes you think they're out there to help people. You never know. It's just you don't know where the money's going, etc. So he creates the International African Association. Okay, I want you to think about that for a second. International African Association. Okay, does that sound like it's meant to help the people of Africa? Yes, it does. At surface value, would you take it like that? I would. Would you maybe grab $5 out of your pocket or $3 or some change and say, hey, here it is, man. I hope you can go out there and save the people of the Congo. And you're a little bit young for this, but there used to be infomercials at like night because public television couldn't afford to actually have programming on 24 hours a day. So they have like 2-hour blocks at midnight to 2 a.m. where they have infomercials trying to sell you on some acronym of a humanitarian aid organization that was there to try to help people of Africa. I want to throw this chair out that window because where in Africa? Who? What kind of resources? What are you actually doing? Like, come on now, right? It just, geez. So that one always got me. And then this whole thing called the Berlin Conference. Okay, those of you on Zoom, I hope you're listening here. This Berlin Conference was what someone called the British Conference in that warm-up question. I don't really care if you know the name of it or not, but I want you to know the concept. And that is that basically Germany, which I don't think Mr. Renshaw lectured on the unification of Germany, did he? Germany became a country, and a physical, actual country for the first time ever in 1871. This conference is called in 1884, so 13 years after Germany became a country. That's not very long. Their prime minister, basically one of the most masterminds of politics, they say, in history, because he turned Germany into this massive empire in, like, again, 20 years, named Otto von Bismarck, called together all of the world powers at this conference. And that's where they divided up the entire continent and said basically all you had to do was have one military office, be able to control the local peoples, and that's all your land. It's sickening. Sickening to think that that could happen and that anyone else around the world would let it happen. But it all goes back to that thing that I started off class with, which was the white man's burden. You remember that? Think about that, okay? So the Germans are hosting the conference, so inevitably they get to kind of control some of the land. they get a lot more out of it than they deserved. And because Britain and France didn't want to go to war, just like they had with Napoleon, remember that? Just like they had in the 7 Years' War, which you may or may not have learned about. Probably learned about that in 8th grade U.S. history. That was kind of an important war, 1756 to 1763, and that gave the British control of India and the British control of the colonies, right? So they don't want to go to war again against each other. And so they just said, all right, Leopold, have it, bud. It's your personal colony. So he then enacts this thing called rubber tariff. Rubber tariff was basically a ploy or a scheme to get away with getting as much resources as possible. They say in the heart of Africa, the middle, okay, the part on the map that gets most neglected. Look at a map. You got to understand this. Look at this map. Australia and North America and Alaska look way bigger than they physically are. Mr. Renshaw pointed that out yesterday, but the interior of Africa is the place on the map that is most squeezed, okay, and is misrepresented physically in its size due to the way that we use a mercantile or Mercator projection, all right? And so not only were people ignorant then, but honestly, people are ignorant now about the size of the continent, especially this area of the Congo, all right? So he gets to keep that for himself. He kills between 10 and 20 million people in a period of the mid 1870s to 1903. Okay, 10 to 20 million people. And the Holocaust, anywhere from about 8 to 12. 12 is a very high number, 8's a medium range number, 6 to 10 also could be said, died in the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler's Holocaust, okay? 10 to 20 million people disappear in the heart of Africa and no one says a freaking word. That's a crime. That's a genocide. Okay, a lot of people should have been put to death, or if you don't believe in that, punished for their actions in this. Did King Leopold get punished? No. Guess why? Read that last line. He burned all of his records. You guys got me worked up this morning. All right, so burns all of his records. So when he has to give it back because people exposed him, nobody can see how much money he actually made. So if you go to Belgium today, he spent $330 million on these palaces, government buildings, and also on like a museum. There's an African museum in Belgium still, Brussels. I have not been to Brussels, I will admit, but I've seen pictures, I've done my research, I'd love to go. And honestly, maybe go throw a protest up. They should give that money back to the people who actually deserve it, right? Anyways, there it is. There's my rant. So I got a video for us. This is a little bit of a cartoonish video. Goes over some of the things I said. It's more if we're trying to teach the ignite, chunk, chew, review style that some of your teachers may be using. That's kind of the new terminology. This is our what I would call chew on it. So I made this last night at 9:45 questions. There's a few of them. And we'll just kind of walk through it. And this is not like play stuff. This is pretty deep stuff. So please respect the fact that, again, this is a silent Holocaust, I call it, because, and not a Holocaust, but a silent genocide that people don't really around the world know much about or ever really discuss. Because it's told from the different perspective, European perspective. All right.
Leopold II and the Congo Free State. The cruel Congo colony.
Hey, Zoomers, Francesca, can you see that? Or can you hear it?
I could.
You can hear it?
Yeah, I could.
Okay, excellent. All right.
Between 1885 and 1908, the Belgian King Leopold II personally ruled the Congo Free State, which was also known as the Independent State of the Congo. Because he ruled the state personally, he had total control of its resources and had to answer to no one.
All right. Why did Leopold control the Congo? What do you think? Seriously, 5-second answer. He controlled it because, what do you want? Yeah. They had no resources themselves. That's correct. They wanted to industrialize. I think Mr. Renshaw went over those motives the other day. He wanted a colony of his own since he was young and rubber. Bingo. Piece of land. Got Joe Vu back in. Yes. All right. Make sure you throw an answer in there so when I get the participation points, it comes up. All right. We are going to move on though. Not that way. You gotta remember not to do that. Continue, press play.
In 1865, King Leopold II succeeded his father, King Leopold I, to the Belgian throne. The Belgium nation was a young one, created in the aftermath of the revolutions of 1830. It recently had broken away from the Netherlands and was recognized as a neutral and constitutional monarchy. Belgium experienced great industrial development and colonial expansion during Leopold's reign, and he is mainly remembered as the founder and sole owner of the Congo Free State. The brutal exploitation of the Congolese population in his pursuit of resources like ivory and rubber are infamous.
All right, what products did King Leopold use to make money? Should say, what products did King Leopold use to make money? It just said them. All right, got it. So type in, I don't know why they don't pop up on here. Rubber, right? Good. What is so important about rubber, folks? Yeah, but not just tires. You're right on tires completely, but also all the little tubes that go into a car that like kind of spray the oil into like the wheels and the grease and even the oil that brings it to the combustion engine that became popular needed to have a lot of rubber on it. Did it again. Congratulations. Let's play. Here we go.
The king believed that without a colony, a country could never achieve any historical significance. And in addition to that, he believed a colony would have great economic possibilities and could help spread Western civilization. Underneath this, as a constitutional monarch, Leopold II had no real power in Belgium, so it could offer him a way to gain more power and enrich himself. However, his government disagreed with him. They considered colonialism to be anachronistic and were therefore not interested in pursuing his colonial dreams. The king knew he couldn't count on their support and had to think of another way. His eyes were set on the Congo in sub-Saharan Africa, which was largely unexplored in the mid-19th century and was mostly unclaimed by European countries, except for the coastal areas. King Leopold II developed a new strategy to obtain the Congo. In 1876, he helped organize a geographical conference in Brussels so that his operations would be legitimized. There, he proposed the creation of a holding company named the Association Internationale Africaine, later known as the Comité d'études pour le Congo, and finally as the Association Internationale du Congo from 1879.
International Association of the
The
Congo.
AIA would provide a front for his colonial activities. That way, he would have it recognized as a philanthropic platform. As its mission, Leopold pledged to suppress the East African slave trade, guarantee free trade with the colony, and promote humanitarian policies. This was to distract critics and justify Leopold's ambition on the continent.
All right, so what did Leopold say he was going to do for the Congo state? Okay. How did he dupe people, trick them? The AIA, whatever that is, good to me. It's promote free trade, good. End slavery and create free trade. Yeah, come on. Did the exact opposite. Help the Congo also. Good answers in everybody. Take away slavery. Slavery had already been eradicated in every country, including at this point, the United States. Civil War was over. Okay, only in Brazil and Portugal, Brazil really was the last place that really slavery was legal up till 1887. So his idea of ending slavery was a crock too, because abolitionist movement had already occurred around the world.
The Congo. In 1878, the king found a journalist and explorer who also saw great economic possibilities in Africa, named Henry Morton Stanley. Stanley had been to the Congo between 1874 and 1877. The king decided to hire him to survey the Congo River area in 1879. Stanley was to build roads and bridges, establish posts along the navigable river, and he had to make treaties with the Congolese chiefs. His exploration was under the guise of Leopold's holding company, which was devoted to free trade and the suppression of the slave trade. Stanley returned in 1882 and had concluded treaties with over 500 chiefs. These chiefs did not have a true idea of what they had signed and only received a few yards of cloth or a few trinkets in exchange for putting their marks on his mysterious papers, and thus accepting the flag of the Congo Association.
All right, how did Leopold gain the signature of African tribes? Gosh, this is what I felt like when I signed my mortgage to my house. Hi there, here's 100 pieces of paper. Sign your name if you want your house. It's like I didn't read any of it. Could have been totally new. Do you imagine that happening though? Do you think it was as nice as they said on the on that video, or do you think they had a knife to these chiefs' throats or a gun and said, sign it or else, right?
And they set up
Yeah, and there, Stanley has a cachet of modern weapons with them, and in the interior of Africa, they hadn't had gunpowder yet. It doesn't seem right. All right, come on, folks, answer up here. We're at 50%. Make them force them to make a treaty. They didn't know what they were signing. He didn't tell them what they were signing. He tricked them, bribed them. Awesome. All right, we're gonna keep moving. Stop doing that. We're gonna keep going on here just till we have time to finish.
Leopold II was not the only person to see great opportunities in Africa. Many explorers went there trying to claim pieces of land. This became known as the Scramble for Africa and led to the division of Africa at the Berlin Conference from 1884 to 1885. Here, Leopold used skillful and cunning diplomacy and played the major powers against each other. He managed to get the Congo River Basin and change the name of the territory to the Congo Free State. Now, he was the absolute ruler of the basin, which was 8 times the size of Belgium. Europe had no way to enforce the general agreements made at the conference, which included further steps to root out slave trade and the protection of the rights of the local people. As the enforcement of these agreements was therefore impossible, Leopold was determined to make the Congo commercially profitable. Therefore, he ignored the fact that slavery was banned. The world was demanding rubber for the growing bicycle and automobile industry, and much of the resource was found in the Congo. The local people were put to work to collect the rubber and were to meet inhumane quotas under impossible conditions. The natives were to slash the vines and lather their bodies with the rubber and then scrape it off into the baskets. If these quotas were not met, horrible consequences would follow: beatings with a shikot whip, mutilation, or death. Those who refused to provide labor, rubber, or ivory.
All right. Why did the Congolese people work for the people who worked for Leopold? Okay, that's kind of a tricky question, but why did the Congolese people work for the people who worked for Leopold? Because remember, Leopold never went there. He created a fake army. See some people getting a little, sleepy. I get that. I probably should turn the light on. Yeah, what did you say since you got it on your screen? I think that means you did it. What'd you put? They were forced to do it. Anybody else around the room? What you got? More. Yeah, lose their life if they didn't do it. Lose a limb, hands. That became kind of a. If you ever seen the movie Blood Diamond, in the beginning, they chop off the hands, And that's kind of a continuation of Leopold's terror in the continent of Africa, because when you lose your hand, you can't work. You are basically not able to help out your family, and you also can't vote. You can't sign. So that takes away your ultimate freedom or liberty. All right,
Ivory met with the same fate. Leopold had set up
Jacob,
his
if
own
you stand
private
up,
army,
that's fine.
the Force Publique, to enforce these quotas and suppress any uprising. They were recruited or conscripted from tribes in the Old Congo, Zanzibar, and British West Africa. As proof that they had killed a villager who didn't fulfill their quota, these soldiers were required to sever the hands off to show their officers one hand for every bullet used. This was because the officers were concerned that ammunition was being wasted on hunting animals for sport. Desperate measures were taken, as the quantity of chopped off hands could pay for an unfulfilled rubber quota. There were even small wars between villages to provide enough hands, and soldiers would cut them off from villagers dead or alive. Leon Rom was the brutal administrator who was in charge of the Force Publique. He was known to decorate his flower bed with the severed heads of his victims and kept a gallows outside his house at Stanley Falls.
This is serious. In the book King Leopold's Ghost, they talk about the towns like that the Force Publique, this fake army that Leopold's guys created from recruited soldiers, that they would string up the hands and then put it on trees. You know how some people have like lights in their backyard, like on posts where they sit out there? They would put hands around their little town like that just to warn off people who might want to try to mess with them. That's how many hands they had. They actually ended up with buckets of them. Like, yeah.
While choosing to maximize his short-term economic gains, Leopold II exhausted the resources and enslaved the people. He managed to gain a serious income from this and amassed a personal fortune. But this was not enough to make it profitable, and more investments were needed. In 1889 and 1895, the king borrowed money from his own government. In return, the government would get the right to annex the Congo in 1901. That year, the government decided not to use that opportunity, and Leopold could continue his exploitations. The atrocities became clearer and clearer starting in 1890. That year, George Washington Williams, who was an African-American Baptist minister, made a trip across the Congo Free State. He was shocked by what he saw and wrote an open letter to the king condemning the brutal and inhumane treatment of the locals. He said that the crimes committed were done in the king's name, and even though he hadn't set one foot in the Congo, he would still be just as guilty. Unfortunately, Williams died on the way home, and therefore the king didn't feel compelled to investigate the accusations. But after this letter, other reports soon followed. A public outrage in the beginning of 1904, after European press revelations of what actually was going on in the Congo, led to an international protest movement. Prominent writers such as Arthur Conan Doyle and Mark Twain took part in these condemnations. Twain wrote a pamphlet called King Leopold's.
All right. How was King Leopold exposed? Okay, or his operations, how were they exposed? Does anybody know who Mark Twain is? What did he write?
He wrote a lot of famous books. He wrote,
I think you just said it.
Tom
Tom Sawyer, Tom and Huck. Maybe you've heard of that. Huckleberry Finn. He was a celebrity, though, one of the biggest celebrities in the time in the United States. And so for him to start drawing attention to this was a really important part of the movement for people to actually start thinking about what was happening in these colonies. He also spoke out against the United States. You'll learn about this next year, but the U.S. stole the Philippines from Spain, or from the Philippines themselves. Spanish had ruled it. Remember, right? From maybe you talked about that or not. I don't remember if you did, but we also stole Puerto Rico, Cuba, had a huge presence in Latin America, and it's not like the United States wasn't guilty in this whole thing too. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Okay. Hawaii, we took that from the Queen of Hawaii because we wanted to control the fruit plantations there. For economic mercantilism, or imperialism. All right. A Baptist found out he was doing it, told it up. I mean, George Washington Williams was really the one who exposed him, and other people caught on.
Poe's soliloquy.
Right.
And Doyle later in 1909 published The Crime of the Congo after supporting the campaign for reforms. Joseph Conrad visited the Congo colony, which inspired him to write the novel Heart of Darkness, and Leon Rom may have been the basis for the character of Kurtz. It is estimated that as many as 10 million people had died during the Congo Free State's existence, which was half of the population. In November 1908, it was over. The Belgian government forced the king to.
All right, so this is the last question. We're done with this video. What were the consequences of Leopold's actions? What do you think, deep, long term? Obviously, half the population was killed. That's a big. That's a huge number. See if you can think of anything else though that would have come from that. He wasn't actually killed. He would die a natural death. Half the population died, of course. Slavery had continued when he promised it would. Good. He was forced to give up all of his stuff, correct? It led on more people to do similar things, correct? And Africa had to endure slavery for a longer time. It's interesting in AP World History Day, we're talking about the consequences of after this, how African countries gained independence. So we're looking at this like 80 years later, 100 years later, and the problems that still occurred. And not just Africa, but also in India and China, different places in Asia. All right. It affected the people of Congo. Slavery ensued after being banned. He murdered half the population, completely monopolized the economy. Do you think he left the people who were there, who were still alive, with a good way to rule? Like a good idea? No. And it still continues to this day. Awesome. All right. So this map was kind of showed to you yesterday. I understand this is blurry because I just pulled it off of Google. But I wanted you to understand this. In the gray, there's two areas. Okay. If you look up here on your own screen, Abyssinia is Ethiopia. And over here is Liberia. Liberia was a place for freed slaves to return to. It is one of the worst diamond exporting places in the world to this day. Illegal diamonds called blood diamonds. And then Ethiopia would remain independent until Mussolini, who became the dictator of Italy, would come in with a mechanized machinery and end their freedom. So essentially, and end their colony. So essentially, the entire continent gets eaten up by Europeans, except for Liberia, where freed slaves from North and South America could return to. Is that, I mean, wrap your head around that. That's a continent with 56 countries today that was turned into basically a European playground for them to steal resources. Okay. So Edward Morel, who was a famous British and French journalist in 1903, kind of building on the movement of Mark Twain and George Washington Williams, penned a entire kind of story called The Black Man's Burden, which was a rebuttal to Kipling's White Man's Burden. All right. And this is the last paragraph. I wanted to just kind of read this with you. It's not an easy read. I need you to stay with me. Some of you, we're almost done. So we have one question and we're done. So I want you to stay with me and just kind of try to understand this as we talk through it. To reduce all the varied and picturesque and stimulating episodes in savage life to a dull routine of endless toil for uncomprehended ends. Anyone have a guess as to what that's kind of saying? Okay, go ahead, Chris. I haven't heard from you yet. Okay, to do rigorous tasks that may be impossible to do. And good. What was the last part?
As long as,
Good. Doing the same thing over and over again All right, so then it says to dislocate social ties and disrupt social institutions. What's that mean? Anybody have a guess as to what that means? See if we can get Luke involved. Go ahead. Friends? Yeah, could build on that. Yeah, so social institutions and social ties are our family ties. He ruined families. He ruined cultures. He ruined any type of a possible government they ever could have. Okay. To stifle nascent desires and crush mental development. I think most of you get what that means. That's destroying your ability to learn or think because you're being forced to do this labor. To graft upon primitive passions, the annihilating evils of scientific slavery, and the bestial imaginings of civilized man. So basically, Edward Morel is saying that you are essentially turning these people into animals, whereas you're claiming that you're going to make them into civilized people. Is that right? No, that's awful. And then he says, unrestrained by convention or law. That means that could anybody stop Leopold? Can anybody stop the other European countries? Were there laws against their actions? No, there was no United Nations. There was no one to stop them. And fine, to kill the soul in a person. This is a crime which transcends physical murder. I don't like this line, but I like people to see it. To kill the soul in a people, this is a crime which transcends physical murder. What does that mean? Somebody new, Nate. Okay, it makes the person have a hellish life, but yeah, build on it. What's worse than murder? Okay. Okay, taking away their morals, having them live a horrible life. Maritza? Yeah, taking away their way of life and culture. Anybody else? Yeah.
And pretty much the one that would have been really
All right, so the idea that killing them might have been easier than killing the soul. What is the soul? That is your ability to be a person, right? Isn't that what John Locke argued for? If somebody is destroying your rights to life, liberty, and happiness in the pursuit of happiness, what are you supposed to do? Think about it and try to get rid of them, right? Well, in this instance, you're killing that ability to use what one is born with, and that's the ability to think, metacognition. It's gone. All right, last question. Some of you are going, why are we doing this so long? Well, here's what I want you to tell me. And then once you're done with this, those of you on Zoom, feel free to log off unless you want to stay on and hang out with me for a minute. What do you think the consequences of this renewed imperialism that kind of got kicked off by Leopold was for the people of the continent of Africa? Think about it based on that quote that we just read by Edward Morel. What do you mean? Or who? Oh, Louis the 14th? Or King Leopold. In all my studies in college, the thing I think I remember the most was this book, King Leopold's Ghost, and just this story because it's so undertold. Everyone knows about Louis the 14th and his son who got beheaded in the French Revolution. Wah, 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 wah. That's one person. This is in a place where it just didn't get the notoriety. And if I got to show you the video I wanted to show you today, which I think is a little too graphic right now, it's called Crisis in the Congo. It's on YouTube. I'd love for you to watch it. It's 26 minutes long, but it really shows you how this destroyed this area to this day. There's still civil war there. Yes.
We were talking about
What's that?
what do you consider home?
I'm sorry, Hall.
When the Soviet Union started,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the great, oh yeah. All right, so I gotta wash your desk down a second, but I got a good question. There was a question of did the Soviet Union commit genocide? Oh yeah. Stalin killed between more 50 to 60 million people. Yeah, in the West, us, we don't really even talk about it. We will talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen on Zoom, answer up here. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for your participation. All right,
a
bye.
good
It's great
day.
to see you. Those of you had your camera on, thanks a lot.
Bye. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. See